"You're being placed on administrative leave while the investigation happens." The words hit William like a punch to the gut. "Administrative leave?" he repeated in disbelief. "For how long?" "Until further notice," the captain replied in a firm tone. "You should take this time to reflect on your actions." "I'm trying to give you a chance, William. But if this investigation turns up anything more damaging, you could lose your badge." William stood up, his body tense with frustration. "But Captain, that's enough, William," Captain Mitchell interrupted. "This is bigger than just you now." William left the office in a daze, his mind swirling with the weight of what had just happened. Outside, he could feel the eyes of his fellow officers on him, some with pity, others with quiet judgment. It was clear that he wasn't the only one who thought his actions had gone too far. As William walked out of the station, his thoughts wandered back to that day. The more he replayed the scene in his head, the more he realized that his judgment had been clouded by years of unchecked prejudice. Jonathan Harrington had done nothing wrong, and William had treated him like a criminal simply because he assumed the worst based on his appearance. Back at home, William sat on the front steps of his house, staring out into the street. The quietness of the suburban neighborhood did little to calm his nerves. His mind raced with questions about his future. Would he be fired? What would his wife think if he lost his job? What would happen to their family? But more than anything, William couldn't shake the feeling of guilt creeping into his heart. For years, he had convinced himself that he was just being cautious, that his instincts were right. But now, he realized that those instincts had hurt an innocent young man, someone who could have been anyone's son, not just a senator's. As the sun began to set, William finally admitted to himself what he had been avoiding for so long. He was wrong. And now, the bitter consequences were catching up to him. Meanwhile, in a different part of town, Jonathan Harrington sat with his parents at the dinner table. He hadn't been able to shake off the incident, either. It wasn't just about what had happened to him. It was about the larger issue of prejudice that affected so many others. Senator Harrington had been in touch with the police chief, ensuring that the investigation would be thorough and fair. But to Jonathan, this was bigger than just getting justice for himself. He wanted to make sure that no one else had to go through what he had experienced. "I'm proud of you for how you handled yourself," Jonathan, his mother, Evelyn, said as they ate. "You showed real strength." Jonathan nodded but remained thoughtful. "I just want things to change, Mom. It's not fair that people get judged because of how they look." His father, Senator Harrington, placed a hand on Jonathan's shoulder. "We'll do our part, son. This isn't just about us. It's about making sure that everyone gets treated fairly, no matter where they come from." Jonathan looked at his father, feeling a sense of hope. The battle for justice wasn't over, but together, they were ready to face it. Weeks passed, and the investigation into Officer William Parker's conduct continued. The media attention had not died down. If anything, it had intensified. Interviews with other victims of Parker's unfair policing surfaced, and the pressure on the police department mounted. William, still on administrative leave, felt like his world was closing in. He spent his days at home, away from the public eye. He avoided social media and the news, unable to face the growing backlash. Laura, his wife, tried to be supportive, but even she was struggling to cope with the uncertainty. One evening, as they sat on the porch, William finally spoke about something that had been weighing on his mind. "I've been thinking," William began to speak. "Maybe I was wrong. Maybe? I've been wrong for a long time." Laura looked at him, surprised by his admission. "What do you mean?" William sighed deeply. "I've always prided myself on being a good cop. But now, I'm starting to realize that I've let my own biases affect how I do my job. I saw Jonathan that day, and I didn't see a young man just walking down the street. I saw someone who didn't belong, someone to be suspicious of. I didn't stop to think, to really look at him." Laura placed her hand on his. "William, it's not too late to make things right. You can learn from this." William nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had spent so much time denying his mistakes, but now it was time to face them. "I don't know if I can fix this," he said, "but I'm going to try." The next morning, William made a decision. He couldn't sit back and watch his life fall apart without taking responsibility for his actions. He went to the police department and requested a meeting with Captain Mitchell. When he entered the captain's office, he stood tall, though his heart raced with anxiety. "Captain, I need to say something," William began to speak, his voice full of emotion. "I've had time to think, and I know I was wrong. I let my prejudices guide me that day. I treated Jonathan Harrington unfairly, and I've probably done the same to others without even realizing it. I'm not asking for sympathy, but I want to take accountability. I'm willing to face the consequences of my actions." Captain Mitchell studied William for a moment, his expression serious but thoughtful. "I've been waiting for you to come to this realization, Parker. It takes a lot of guts to admit when you've messed up." William nodded. "I don't expect this to fix everything, but I want to do better. I want to change." The captain leaned back in his chair, nodding slowly. "It's a start, William. But change doesn't happen overnight. If you're serious about this, you'll need to take some real steps. Sensitivity training, community outreach, rebuilding trust with the people you've wronged, these are things that'll take time and effort." "I understand, sir," William replied. "I'll do whatever it takes." As William left the station that day, he felt a small sense of relief. The road to redemption wouldn't be easy, but at least he was taking the first step. On the other side of town, Jonathan Harrington was also thinking about what had happened. The incident with Officer Parker had left a mark on him, but instead of feeling defeated, he felt driven. He wanted to make sure that what happened to him wouldn't happen to others, and he knew he had the platform to create change. One evening, Jonathan sat down with his father in their living room. The senator had been busy with meetings and calls about police reform, but Jonathan wanted to be involved. "Dad, I've been thinking," Jonathan said. "I want to do more than just talk about what happened. I want to help make real changes." Senator Harrington looked at his son with pride. "What do you have in mind?" "I want to start a program," Jonathan explained. "Something that helps build relationships between the police and the communities they serve. People need to understand each other better. If officers like Parker spent more time getting to know the people in the neighborhoods they patrol, maybe they wouldn't jump to conclusions so quickly." Senator Harrington nodded thoughtfully. "That's a great idea, Jonathan. And with everything going on right now, it's the perfect time to push for something like that. We could start locally and see how it grows." Jonathan smiled, feeling hopeful. "I don't want this to just be about what happened to me. This is bigger than that. It's about making sure no one else has to go through what I did." In the weeks that followed, both William and Jonathan took steps toward change. William enrolled in sensitivity training and began working with community leaders to rebuild trust. It wasn't easy. Many people in the neighborhood still saw him as the officer who had unfairly targeted Jonathan, but he knew that change wouldn't come overnight. Jonathan, with the help of his father, launched the community program he had envisioned. It was called Bridging the Gap, and its goal was to foster better relationships between law enforcement and the people they served. The program held workshops, town hall meetings, and events where officers and residents could meet in non-confrontational settings, sharing stories and learning from each other's experiences. One day, at one of these events, William and Jonathan came face to face again. The tension between them had lessened, but the memory of that day still lingered in both of their minds. "I'm sorry, Jonathan," William said quietly, standing before the young man he had wronged. "I can't take back what I did, but I'm trying to do better." Jonathan looked at him and responded, "I appreciate that, Officer Parker. It's going to take time, but I believe people can change." William nodded, grateful for Jonathan's understanding. "I won't stop trying," he said. As they shook hands, it was clear that while the journey ahead would be long, both men were committed to making things right. Months later, the program Jonathan started had expanded to several cities, gaining attention for its success in reducing tensions between communities and law enforcement. Officer William Parker continued his work, attending every event and learning from the people he once feared. Though the road to redemption wasn't easy, William had come to understand that change was possible, both for himself and the system he had once blindly followed. Jonathan, on the other hand, became a voice for justice, using his experience to inspire others to stand up for fairness and equality. In the end, both men learned that while prejudice and mistakes can cause deep harm, there is always a chance for redemption if people are willing to change. Thank you for watching to the end. I hope you enjoyed this story. If you did, don't hesitate to like the video and share it with your friends too. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more fascinating stories. Have a nice day.